Hi gang, Dr. Mike Carberry here from Advanced Medical Integration, reflecting a little bit about our last year and how well that year went and what our goals are for this year. It's 2020, January 2020, and we are definitely riding the wave of expansion, and I want to share some of those ideas with you, what we've gone through in the last year and where that's taken us this year and beyond. So 2019 was a good year. We started off in 2018 getting our first Inc. 5000 list award. And what that is, Inc. 5000, or Inc. magazine, keeps a list of 5,000 businesses. Excuse me. These are the fastest growing businesses in the country out of 28 million. And I think we were 1,403 or somewhere in that neighborhood. Don't know the exact number, but it was on the lower end of that 5,000 list. We were one of the fastest growing companies in 2018. We were extremely excited about that. My wife and I got to meet Grant Cardone that year. We went to GrowthCon, first exposure to Grant Cardone, and after that we had an opportunity, because of the seats we bought and the price we paid for those seats, we got a chance to meet with Grant Cardone, and we actually got an interview with him. He was very interested in what we were doing. And that led us into a fantastic year for 2019. The last thing that happened at the very end of 2018 was we established a relationship with Predictive Biotech, or Predictive Technologies, for regenerative medicine, and it has been a phenomenal relationship. We love working with that company, and they love working with us apparently, and we're very glad to be working with them as one of our primary suppliers for regenerative medicine. So 2019 starts, and the first big event that happened in 2019 was the launch of my book, The Death of American Healthcare. So if you haven't got it, you should get it. We're trying to get it into all the chiropractic schools and then eventually all of the medical schools, because it's an expose on the stats of American healthcare, and they're pretty alarming. We covered a lot of these stats. You know, one of the stats we covered in this book, and we covered at our convention in the spring of 2019, was the cost of American healthcare. The Affordable Care Act passed in 2010, I believe. The design by the name is that it's supposed to make healthcare affordable. It's supposed to make the cost of healthcare go down. And the net effect of that was, in 2010, the cost of healthcare in this country was $2.4 trillion with a T dollars. And 9 years later, it was 3.3 trillion. So it was a growth of over 30%, 33% to be exact. That's a lot of growth in the cost of healthcare on the heels of passing a bill that was supposed to lower the cost of healthcare. So why do I bring this up? Well, we're in healthcare, and that's a pretty major factor. And obviously, a lot of those dollars are not going to us. So where are they going to? And some of the stats we looked at in my book is, well, where does the money go? Where does the money trail go? And an interesting thing that was brought out in doing our research for this book is the number of doctors that actually belong to the AMA. See, because the AMA is a medical authority. Somebody said, well, who is the AMA and why do they have so much power? Well, they're the basic authority in healthcare, in medical care, that tells medical doctors what to do and how to do it. They set the standard of care. They also own all the billing codes in healthcare, so they're the ones that tell the insurance companies what should be reimbursable and what shouldn't be reimbursable. And you look at that and you go, so then doctors must run that industry, that organization. Well, less than 8% of doctors in 2008 belonged to the American Medical Association. That was a big embarrassment to the American Medical Association, because the logical question on the heels of that is, where does the money come from? And if you do the trailing, it seems like most of it comes from the pharmaceutical world. So you go, that's a conflict of interest. So the insurance companies, the drug companies, and hospitals turn out to be the highest paid executives in the country. That's pretty wild. Is that one hand washing the other? The one thing that never added up to me, and in researching this book, it was answered pretty clearly to me, why would insurance companies cover things that don't work and are more expensive? So like if you compare it to chiropractic, you say, somebody with a disc problem, nothing works 100% of the time. Chiropractic doesn't work 100% of the time, but it has a very high success rate in dealing with disc problems. And if you look at a chiropractic care plan in treating a disc, it takes repeated treatments, that raises the cost a little bit, but the total cost of that care plan is probably about, I don't know, $4,000, $5,000. okay? That's a lot of money, but you help resolve a disc problem. You look at the back surgery and you go, okay, well, how successful is that? Well, I was told by a surgeon, point blank, that the success on back surgery is 25% or less. That's a 75% failure rate. And how expensive are those surgeries? Well, they're in the tens of thousands of dollars. Sometimes it runs over $50,000. Sometimes it runs over $70,000. Sometimes it could even run $100,000. And you go, that's a lot of money for something that only works 25% of the time. Which one does the insurance cover better? The surgery. Why would that be? I could not figure that out for the life of me, and the answer was sitting right in front of my nose. The answer was, if you're in healthcare and the cost of insurance is based upon the cost of healthcare, would you rather the healthcare cost be high or low? Let me make it a little even easier and more simple to explain. In the Affordable Care Act, there's a part of that law that says insurance companies can only make 15% profit, meaning if they exceed that, they have to rebate their customers, which is a great law on the face value. But what's also written in there is, well, if there's an audit, that's not considered that 15%. So when an insurance company recoups money back in an audit from a doctor, that's not considered profit. If an insurance company wants to go over that 15% threshold, obviously the way they're going to do it is by auditing doctors. And in the last 10 years, there's probably been more audits of any type of doctor than there has been in the previous 40. So you look at that and you go, okay, that wouldn't lower healthcare costs. And then it was even made more simple to me. If you're limited to a 15% profit in any industry, would you rather the cost of that injury be $1 million or $1 trillion? And that was the answer right there. The more expensive healthcare gets, the better money the insurance companies make. So they don't want it to be less expensive. They would prefer, using that equation, that healthcare be expensive and not effective, so it has to be repeated. That makes sense when you wonder, why don't they cover chiropractic? Why do they give a hard time to covering chiropractic? Why do they audit doctors after doing like 6 visits through the ASH network and saying this is excessive care, when we're actually, you look at our costs compared to traditional medicine, it's a fraction of the cost. So it's tempting to say those greedy surgeons, but then I started getting to know surgeons over the last few years, and quite a few in the last year. And I found out that the surgeons aren't getting that money. The top executives at the hospital are getting that money. You look at some of the highest paid people in the country, top hospital executives are up there. And you look at, say, a knee replacement that can cost $30,000, $35,000. How much does a surgeon get? Well, if it's a Medicare patient, the surgeon's going to get $800, $850. And who gets the rest of that? Well, the hospital does. You go, that's a monopoly. And I believe it is. And I believe that is what caused the unlevel playing field to exclude any alternative treatment from drugs and surgery. And the only reason they like surgery is because surgery leads to more drugs. So you look at that and you go, well, how do I do that? How do you handle that? Which has been my quest for the last 3 decades since I've been involved in healthcare. So in 2019, we had quite a few really inspiring events happen that leads me to believe that we can actually disrupt this industry and change it. Some people say I'm crazy for making this video, but I am crazy. So after the death of the American healthcare, and we looked at all these stats and how horrific they are, and how like the leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 50 is opioids. Prescribed opioids lead to that. 80% of heroin users say they got there from a prescribed opioid. And you go, all right, so I've had doctors say, well, a lot of those deaths are illegal use of opioids. Yeah, but how do those people get addicted to opioids? Through a legal prescription. 80% of them. And what happens is now the standard of care from our big brothers at the AMA are saying, yes, it was safe to use these opioids. It started in the late 90s, and now we have the leading cause of death of Americans under the age of 50 is opioids. And what's the number one prescription to get somebody on an opioid path? Back pain. Hello? So we go, you know what? They may have just crossed the line. This may be enough to help disrupt the industry, and I believe it is. Americans are looking at their relatives and saying, I don't want to end up like that. Let me do something different. So they're searching for alternatives. They're looking for regenerative medicine. Now, regenerative medicine in 2019 was the wild, wild west, but we did see the FDA stepping in and saying, look, here's some rules that we're going to start to enforce next year in 2020 in November. And what's happening is you're starting to see some of these cowboys in the wild, wild west starting to be eliminated from the equation. That's why we like Predictive, because Predictive is not one of those cowboys. They are following the rules and producing a phenomenal product that we are getting great results with. So remember, when anybody tries to discredit any type of stem cell therapy, you got to look at what were the results that the patients actually got. And the patients are getting great results. And since it's not covered by insurance, well, they don't have as much control over it, which now me saying that, the insurance industry might try to get control over it. Don't be surprised if you see that in the next couple of years. At our convention, we were very, very fortunate, because of the way I'm talking to you now and my belief system, to have Grant Cardone step on our stage and address our people. And one of our big mentors, my wife and I, we've been to his Growth Con several times. Phenomenal individual. He's been on our stage. He inspired our guys, and we were able to top the 1,000 butts in the seat mark for that convention, which was phenomenal, because to get 1,000 people to show up for anything these days is pretty tough. And that did happen with our convention with our main speaker, Grant Cardone. But what was nice about that convention was Grant wasn't the only act in town. He was definitely a good act and the main act. But he brought with him some people like Tim Grover. Tim Grover, Michael Jordan's personal trainer. What an inspiring guy. Our doctors flocked to him because a lot of them were, in sports and in healthcare, and you look at that, and Tim Grover, background as a physical therapist in physical therapy school when he started working with Michael Jordan. And of course, we all know what he did with Michael Jordan, and he was just fascinating to listen to, what it takes to be a winner, what the mindset is, and just a great guy. But it didn't stop there. We had Dr. John Rosa speak, and Dr. John Rosa, who is the only chiropractor on the White House Committee on Opioid Abuse, and I might have gotten that committee wrong, or the name of it not exactly right, but it's a committee that the White House is paying attention to how many people are having problems with opioids. And John is a very, very passionate guy, former chairman of the board for the New York Chiropractic College. Great guy. What a warm, wonderful individual. Graced our stage, and unfortunately had to deliver a lot of really ugly statistics about healthcare using opioids as a means to deal with problems. And it really leads to a lot of tragic things. So John really opened our eyes to a lot of ideas. Our medical people very much respected his delivery and the information he had. Of course, the medical people that we attract to our group are people that like to do things more function-based, less symptom-based, and want to avoid things like opioids. So he was very warmly received, and he delivered a fantastic message. And we also had at that same convention, come in through teleskype, was Kevin Harrington, former shark on Shark Tank, who also became very interested in us about the same time Grant Cardone did. Maybe it was us hitting the Inc. 5000 list the second year in a row, which happened in 2019. So we hit it in 2018. We're in the top 5,000 fastest growing companies, and again in 2019. When we hit that, we got a letter from the company, from Inc. magazine, that said, you're in rare company. Companies that have achieved the same thing were companies like Vizio, Microsoft, Chobani Yogurt, really stellar, really successful companies. And we're very proud of that. So we have our trophies here and are mounted on the wall in our lobby, and just really excited that we hit that the second year in a row. But Grant brought somebody with him who didn't grace our stage, who was probably the most impactful person to meet for us and for you that whole weekend, and that was Mr. Brandon Dawson. Brandon Dawson was in the process of forming Cardone Ventures with Grant Cardone. And Cardone Ventures is a company that invests in growing companies that have a great message, great product, great whatever, and great potential to change the landscape of business. And they looked at us and said, we are one of those companies. So we're very, very fortunate to have Brandon show up. And so we met him and found out that he lived, it was from Oregon and was right across the river in Vancouver. So Colleen and I started going over to his business over there and meeting him and meeting his staff. And it turns out he was a consultant in the audiology business. So he was in healthcare and he was in hearing. And so he was a consultant for those types of practices, and single-handedly took those practices 3x the whole industry for average collections based on his program. He had the audiology schools sending him interns because the interns that went through his program ended up making 3 or 4 times as much as they would than if they did it without his program. And so he made a huge impact on that whole industry. So in our meetings with him, we started realizing, he's with Cardone Ventures. They're looking for businesses to invest in and work with, and not just give money to, but put their effort into. So after many meetings, many attorney meetings and masterminds, we finally came to the conclusion we can work together. And we're very proud to say that Cardone Ventures in 2019 with Brandon Dawson and Grant Cardone became partners with AMI to help us in our goal to disrupt the industry of healthcare and actually change the landscape of healthcare. Try to bring that cost down by putting services in that were more function-based and less symptom-based. And in doing that, that would actually help patients get to a higher level. So you got the patients getting better, the cost coming down, the doctors delivering the services doing better. It's a win-win all around. And the landscape that we laid out, or the plan that we laid out for the next few years, is nothing short of phenomenal. So at our second convention, we had some of the same people speak. This time, and that was later in the year, this was our symposium that we had in San Diego in October. We had Kevin Harrington actually come and speak directly to our clients. And he's a wizard at marketing and had lots of insightful message to us to give us information on how to expand our businesses. He brought with him Corey Bergeron, an award-winning producer from the Home Shopping Network and from QVC. And when you see Corey and you hear him speak, he's a very engaging, very phenomenal speaker. And he had the whole audience laughing with some of the stories he told about on the Home Shopping Network. And he's just a great guy. Both of them were great guys. Just really enjoyable to have, as part of our program. And great content, great delivery, helping our guys with expanding their business through marketing and exposure in the market. But we also had Mr. Don Mann. And Don Mann was the author of the SEAL Team 6 books, and very prolific author, but also adrenaline junkie and somebody who believes in pushing himself to limits where it's almost over the edge, but not quite to the edge. He did tell us a story about climbing the Himalayan mountains, Mount Everest, the highest mountain in the world, and pushing himself over that limit and almost dying from it. And it was a really amazing story, but he told us lots of stories about the amazing things he's done, the double triathlons and the double marathons and the 30 marathons in 30 weeks, which is incredible. And the things that he did to push himself, and inspiring our doctors to know that they have a lot more reserve than they believe, and they can push themselves to get more done. So having Don there was really great, and he's just a wonderful guy too. He's just, what a teddy bear. You look at this guy and you go, anybody who did that many things and accomplished that many achievements should be able to walk around and have people kiss their ring, but he's very humble. Very, very humble guy, very, very laid back guy, and not trying to steal the limelight, although he has every right to. So we had them speak, but then we had Brandon come in, and Brandon did 2 segments of our convention, and Brandon laid out the plan that we have to take over healthcare. And it was very, very, very well received. Our clients at that convention overwhelmingly reached out and want to be part of this program, so we've been onboarding and fast-tracking this program. We went to our master's group first, which our master's group expanded pretty largely in 2019. We have 3 masterminds a year, and the last one was in New York City, and Brandon came to that. And I believe 90% of our mastermind is doing the program with Brandon Dawson to exponentially 10x their business over the next 10 years, which is phenomenal. And that is something that we're really, all of our attention is on now, because as we wrap up 2019, everything's looking good. Everything's expanding. Our doctors are doing phenomenal. As we reach back to our doctors that want to do the Brandon Dawson platforming to 10x their business, we learned what they did with our program. And I've been on the phone the last couple of days with doctors, hearing them say, I went from 500,000 collections a year to 1.5 million or 2.1 million, or just 3xing and 4xing their business through our program. And now they're ready to go to the next level with Brandon Dawson and 10x it on top of that, which is really exciting. So let me talk about that in the last segment of this video. What are we doing with this? Why are we doing this Cardone Ventures partnership to help our guys do so well. It's called disrupting an industry. So disrupting an industry is based on the idea of how does an idea get accepted. There was a book written by a guy named Everett Rogers, and he wrote this book in 1962, and it was called The Diffusion of Innovations, and he talked about a bell curve that shows how a new idea gets accepted by the majority of the population if it gets accepted. And what he said was the first 2.5% are innovators. These are people that just want new stuff and they buy it because it's new. They don't have the most credibility in the world, but the next group, which is the early adopters, do, and that's 13.5%. And these are people that can look at a new thing and say, that has a lot of value, even if it has to have bugs worked out, that has value, I'm willing to invest in that, I'm willing to try that. And when they do that, you hit 15%, which is called the tipping point. The tipping point, when you get 15% of the population to do anything, the next group automatically looks at it, and that's the early majority, that's 34% of the population, which then triggers the next group, which is the late majority, which is another 34%. And then all you have left is the laggards, which is 16% of the population that buy stuff because the old stuff is not available anymore. So we want to hit that. We believe that chiropractic and alternative healthcare has been held back below that 15% tipping point, and the plan is to make our doctors so successful that we go over that tipping point and attract other healthcare providers, other people in healthcare, other industries, other licenses in healthcare to start realizing, you know what, functional improvement is probably a better way to get people well than symptom relief. Symptom relief generates a lot of income for certain industries, but it doesn't help the patient. Sometimes it does, but usually, leading cause of death is a pill that relieves back pain. That's not what I would call healthcare. So to make that shift, we have to get our guys to perform and run their businesses so successfully that it attracts other people who want to do the same thing. That's how the free market works. That's what our plan is. Brandon has already done this in the audiology industry, and he's going to do it in the physical medicine industry, and we're going to change healthcare. We're going to disrupt the industry. We're going to do it by doing so well and getting our patients so well that it is demanded by not only patients but practitioners as well. And when that happens, the votes go to the things that work, and that's what we're trying to do. We've all known that chiropractic and alternative healthcare, functional medicine, and all those things have worked for decades. And you ask yourself, why doesn't it ever take off? And it's because there are forces that are working to keep them contained so that it doesn't disrupt the present industry. Well, the cat's out of the bag. It's not just me that's going to do this. I mean, there's too many doctors out there going, I can't go back to regular healthcare now that I see what regenerative medicine can do for patients. I can't go back to traditional healthcare now that I see what functional medicine can do for patients. And so what's happening is we are forging a path to promote these things in a way that the public, the doctors, the industry all know they work, and that is where our attention should go because it works better than the present system. So 2020 is looking very, very bright, and we're very excited for it. Our partnership with Cardone and Dawson is nothing short of amazing, and everybody that's gotten involved with it so far, over 25 practices have launched into this in just the last month of the year, have launched into this program. And so far, 100% satisfaction. Everybody that went through it says it's the best thing they've ever done. And so we now have the path to take a chiropractor or even another practitioner and add services to their practice and become medically integrated, which will increase their practice. And then take that and launch it into the Cardone Ventures program, the Dawson program, and launch it into a whole new stratosphere beyond most people's wildest dreams. Not only the owners, but the employees of those clinics as well, which is what really is amazing. So we're looking at this 2020 year as being the year of clarity, being able to see the future as clear as we can with 2020 vision. And we're going to change healthcare, and it's happening this year. So make sure that if you're part of our program, you keep up with all the stuff we're doing. Don't get left in the dust. Make sure you're part of that movement. Go to our conventions, go to our trainings, and if you're asked to attend something and learn about the Dawson movement, sign up for it and learn about it, because it could be life-changing not only for you, but for your employees, your patients, and everybody around you in your life as well. And make sure that you're growing your business. It's your duty to be successful in getting people healthy in a very safe, very effective way. So this is Dr. Mike Carberry of Advanced Medical Integration. I'm glad you spent this time with me. Enjoy I hope you've enjoyed this video and the things that we're doing, and I hope you participate in the things we're going to do in this next year and years to come. Thanks for listening.